Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to test out the Siraya Tech resin lineup and put it through the gauntlet. Full disclosure, two of these bottles were sent to me by Siraya Tech. We have the Tenacious and we have the Blue, and then we have the Fast ABS, and that is the one that I purchased myself. And then the last thing, I would like to ask for your help, because making these videos takes a lot of time for me. Unpaid time, this is spare time, this is my vacation time, and doing these videos for 1,000 people isn't really cutting it. So if I want to reach a lot of people, except for the guys that are watching it right now, please give it a thumbs up, let me know in the comments what you think about it, and maybe include the secret code oranges, and help me out getting these videos to everybody that likes resin printing. I think everybody heard about Siraya Tech. I think it's a very popular brand in the resin printing community. I see a lot of successful prints with Siraya Tech, but we have some specialized resins right in front of us. Now we have the Blue, we have the Tenacious. The Tenacious is not really meant to be printed standalone. It's more used in combination with like a crappy regular based resin to give it a bit more flexibility, to give it a bit more strength. But today we are going to just do it fully 100% Tenacious. If you haven't seen the previous video, I already tested the G2 Systems resin lineup, the Conjurer. I already have tested the Sunlu ABS and we also have tested this shitty Anycubic Eco Resin. This is just plain terrible. If you want to see the testing, there will be a link right over there. First of all, I want to thank Siraya Tech for sending these resins to me and having a great chat with me. It was really interesting knowing a little bit behind the scenes, like for instance the 8K naming that most resins have. That is utter and complete nonsense, and they gladly admitted that it's complete nonsense, but they include it on the bottle because a lot of people just buy because it's 8K or 6K or 4K and stuff like that. But at least they are honest that the 8K naming is just a bunch of wank. Then we have the pricing. The pricing is a little bit more expensive. I will put some prices right over here. It's a bit more expensive, and they were gladly enough to explain a little bit why it's more expensive. And a lot of it is R&D and the production of it and making that everything is just perfect. Getting out consistent samples is their main key, making it very consistent, and that is something that you will not have with some cheaper resins, for instance, that will vary a bit in flexibility or in their main components, because there is not a lot of quality control. So now you know why the price is maybe a bit higher. Now it's time to look if the price also means maybe a bit better. Let's start with the first test. The first test is going to be a smell test. I do not recommend you to do what I do, is just plain smelling the resin. You can react very allergically to these resins. It's no joke. I even have some problems with allergic reactions. I have a heater in my enclosure, and just the warm, hot resin air blowing in my face, I just get massive itchy eyes. So be careful, but I'm gonna take one for the team and let you know how much these stink. First, for reference, this is from the previous video. This was a very stinky resin, and I have to really annoy myself smelling it so I can compare it to a very bad resin. Let's start with a sniff from this. Yeah, very resiny. I don't think that's a real name, but yeah, it's very, very smelly. Then we have the Fast ABS Creamy. This is a gray bottle, but it's the same, it's just a color difference. I must say that the smell is, I didn't like it. Then we have the Blue Nylon Black. It's a bit the same like the ABS. It's not that bad, it's not great either. And this is a very interesting smelling resin. This is totally different than everything else that I have smelled before. They are all some kind of the same smell. It's okay, it's not very annoying. Comparing it to the very bad smelling resin, it's something in between the Sunlu ABS and the Anycubic Eco Resin. So it's okay, it's not bad, but it's not great also. Then next thing I want to talk about is the bottles. As you can see, this bottle is really mangled up with resin spills. It is okay for packaging and shipping it to you. There was a little cap inside of it protecting everything. Protection is not a problem. But pouring it, first thing, if you twist off the bottle, there will be a little ring right in here. I think I tossed twice that ring into my resin vat that you have to scoop it out and throw it away. So not really great. Make sure that you remove the ring before you pour the resin out. And the bottles are not really spill proof. I think every bottle the resin was drooping over the edge and making a big mess, except for this one. This one was okay, but the fast ABS, it's very thin, which is good, but the consequences are it's a very messy bottle. The consistency of the resins. This resin was on the thin side, which is really good. Then we have the tenacious, which is a lot more thick and goopy. So you will have to print this in a hot temperature. And then we have the blue nylon black. This one was very sticky. So if you had some prints finished and you would rinse them off, the amount of resin that is still collected around it was, man, this stuff sticks like crazy. So if you have a failed print like I had, I didn't have enough resin to make another miniature, and the reason because is, first, it's my fault. I wanted to peek if everything was going great, and because this resin is so thick, raising it and lowering it again and starting to print again just totally failed. It was completely my own fault, but that meant that I had to throw away a lot of printed resin and all the stuff that came off of it. So if you are going to clean your build plate, if you're going to clean your vat of your prints, there will be a lot of resin sticking to it, so you will lose a lot of resin after the cleanup. Then next, support removal from the prints. ABS, no problem at all. The blue was a little bit harder, but it was still great. But the tenacious was really hard to remove. One thing is that everything is nice and flexible, like you can see right over here. And that also means that just breaking off the supports from the tenacious isn't really happening. So you will have to snip all the supports off. It's really messy. It's not a great time removing these supports. And one thing that you get is that everything has like a layer of supports. You can try to cut it off, but it's really not that easy to remove the tenacious supports of the prints. Now the prints, it turned out fine. I went with the light support, but I went with more supports. Everything was so flexible when it came out, and it hardened up a little bit after the curing. As you can see, this is the support material from the block, and everything is super flimsy and flexible. This will be very interesting to test. Then one thing we forgot is the warping. The ABS has a potato peeling effect, which is way more than the Sunlu, if I remember correctly. Then the blue, very great, not a lot of warping, really acted very nice. And then the tenacious, it's super flexible, so it's not gonna warp. So the Siraya Tech ABS is a bit more prone to warping. Then for the next part, we have to go downstairs into the testing machine. First, I'm going to pre-drill with the 4mm, and then I'm going to drill the final hole with a 6.8mm so we can tap an M8 into the resin blocks. It's getting loose. And we have our fail. So it's between 9 and 11 Newton meters of thread force. It's really cool that you can see inside of this thing. I already see that we have some blowouts on the top, and we have a little bit, the smallest bit of blowout on the back side. So this feels like it's going to be more brittle. We're at 11 Newton. We are already doing better than the Tenacious. $23. No breaking up. 25, and I feel the first signs of breaking up. Alright, we are done with this one. Time for the bigger one. We are going to start with the lowest setting, which is 28 Newton. And it's done. So between 28 and 38. And we're done at 23 Newton. One thing I noticed removing this block from the supports was very hard to do. You will have to get some snippers and snip them off at the support side. Also, a cool thing to see is that when this came out of the supports, it was very flexible on the supports, but still the print came out great. There's ever so slightly a bit of layer lines to be seen right over here, but beside that, the print quality is just amazing. One thing that I noticed is that when the resin came out of the bottle, already had a yellow tinge. So this is not a clear, this is a clearish resin. Now, the thinner the parts, the more clear it gets. And one thing that I found very cool to see is that these things are almost indestructible. I can push this as hard as I can. This is really hard. This is not going to get broken when you drop it. You can drop this from the 10th floor and I think it still will be okay. Then the little column where it's sitting on, there is ever so slightly, am I able to move it like this? And then I can move it just like that. But I am not able to break this. Even more so, I'm gonna take a hammer. I am almost so confident that even a smack of the hammer is not going to break it. Now let's try that. Came out fine. Hammer blow on the big one. Well, what do you know? Just a little scuffing in front. The print is just fine. This is super durable. So if you're going to print 100% tenacious, it's going to be super expensive doing it, but your print is going to be freaking indestructible. Then one downside we had is printing this bolt. The threads on the bolt are not defined at all. They are very slightly feelable, but we lost some resolution on the threads. So trying to thread it, yeah, that's not going to happen. But the inside of the nuts is very nice and detailed. So tenacious, super good for printing things that cannot break. This is not super flexible. This is going to be great if you want to print stuff that you don't want to break easily. Next up, we have the Siraya Tech Blue. This is a very special resin. Printing it, it's almost like it's a smoky type of blue, but when it's printed solid, you can see this turned nice and black. Even the block, this is not going to be a see-through, but if you're going to print it and it's going to be very fine, then it's going to have a smoked look to it and it's going to have a bluish tint. Trying the threads, I can ever so slightly get the threads to get on, and then it's stuck. So it's a bit overexposed, or we lack some resolution in the bolt, but other than that, it's really fine. I don't have a miniature to print because first time I screwed it up because I didn't add enough supports, and the second time I screwed it up trying to look at it. The details are going to be fine on a miniature. And then the last one, this is the Siraya Tech Fast ABS. Is going to be an ABS-like type of resin. Now let's try to make it catch some threads. As you can see, I am able to make it catch some threads. So the exposure is on point. I think we are able to let it catch some threads. So this is working perfectly fine. Maybe you're wondering why this doesn't fit. This is a set of 4. This is the tightest one that you can fit on this bolt. If this one fits on the bolt, you have perfect tolerances. So we are not far away from perfect tolerances. Then the print details, you can almost see no printer layer lines. This is almost a perfect print, and the color is very good at masking the layer lines. If you look very careful, there's the slightest hint of layer lines right over here. All in all, if you want to print in this color and you're thinking of not painting it, this is just perfect. Support removal was very easy. It printed super fast compared to all the other resins. This is a great resin for miniatures. Okay, let's try to make sense of those charts. We're gonna start with the pull tests. One thing that I'm going to add is that with the Siraya Fast, I left one result out because I think that reaching 400 and 500 Newton meters and then reaching a sample of less than 300 Newton may be a defective sample. Maybe I manhandled it a bit too much. So I left it out, putting the Siraya Fast from something like a 360, 370 Newton sample to a 400 Newton sample. First place we have the Siraya Fast, then we have the Sunlu ABS, the Conjure Rigid, the Conjure Tough, Siraya Blue, Anycubic Eco, and the last place would be the Siraya Tenacious, which isn't all that bad, knowing that the Siraya Tenacious has a lot more of stretch and is a lot more usable than the Eco. So what we can conclude is that the Sunlu ABS and the Siraya Fast and the average pull test have about the same strength. Now looking at the Siraya Blue, claiming it to be a tough type of resin, we already tested the Conjure Tough, and we can see that the Conjure Tough performed far out better than the Siraya Blue with about 80 Newton meters. Then when we look at the push test, things are changing up a bit. The Sirayas didn't do very good in the push test. The Siraya Tenacious is the last one, but that is explainable. It's very flexible, so I didn't expect any better than that. Then one thing that I noticed is that the Siraya Fast did a lot worse than the Sunlu ABS. So the strength is the same, but the lateral forces that can be absorbed before breaking or deforming permanently didn't do as well as the Sunlu ABS. The Siraya Fast had an average of 99 Nm, while the Sunlu ABS had an average of 150 Nm, making the Sunlu ABS 50% more stronger on the lateral push tests. Then when we go back to the Siraya Blue and we compare it with the Conjure Tough, just like the pull test, the push test is about the same result. The Conjure Tough did way better than the Siraya Blue test with 50 Nm or almost 40% more lateral forces absorbed by the Conjure Tough. Then the Tenacious on the last place, which was to be expected. And one thing that I noticed is that even the Anycubic Eco did better than the Siraya Fast in the lateral test. Maybe the Anycubic Eco isn't as shit as I thought. No. Then we have the stiffness test. The Siraya Tech is super flexible. It wasn't able to hold its own weight during the testing. Today is a very cold day, so now it's performing way better than it did when it was 21 degrees. But if you are going to be honest, this isn't a resin suited to hold weight over length. Then we have the Blue and we have the Fast. And while the Fast wasn't doing all that great on the lateral tests, but it was providing very good strength tests, we can see, looking at the picture, that the Fast and the Blue at 100% of the test, so this is the farthest notch on this test sample, did better than the Tough, Rigid, Anycubic and the Sunlu. The Conjure Tough only made it 8 out of 12 before it started sagging on its weight. Then we had the Rigid, which was a 100 out of 100 test. We had the Anycubic Eco Resin, which started sagging at 10 out of 12. And then we had the Sunlu. So the Fast and the Blue are proven to be a lot stiffer than all the other resins that we have tested. Then we have the pricing, and then everything is starting to change for the worst for Siraya Tech. The Siraya Tech's resins are one of the most expensive resins that we have tested, with the Tenacious at $65 for a kilo, not shipped to the door. So we already explained why Siraya Tech is more expensive, but we didn't really see an improvement in the testing. So it's gonna be up to you if you care about the claims that Siraya Tech makes, and if you are willing to spend more money for better R&D and for better quality control. So like I see it, for the ABS like resins, the Sunlu is amazing, and if you are going for some tough or rigids, then the Conjures are doing super great. If you value quality control and R&D, then the Siraya Tech resins is the way to go. And when we are looking at drilling and tapping, most resins except for the Anycubic Eco did fairly well. One more time, please help me out with the YouTube algorithm stuff and all that to make this video go to everybody that loves resin printing. Go like it, include the secret code down below, and share it with your friends and in your groups that you are active in. And maybe if the video is doing great, we are going to do some water washable resins. So you know what to do all the YouTube things, and guys, I see you in the next one.